Okay, fantastic. Lovely to have William here. William, thank you so much. I think we've walked a long road together. It's been interesting to see you, all sorts of interesting opportunities that you take on. So best of luck. William's going back to the UK in 2 weeks' time to work on some fancy nuclear plant, and we just hope that he keeps it all together and he doesn't allow the bottom to drop out. So what we're talking about today is a framework. It was originally referred to as Data Atom. It's now referred to as the multi-dimensional data management framework. And it's about connecting the data dots. And certainly William asked me to just share, this is not about training you to do data management. This is about having a framework to work with whilst you're doing data management. And so I'm not going to spend too much time and try to get things all mixed up. So William, all yours. So
great stuff. You guys can hear me?
yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. All right. I can see your faces. I don't know if you can see the screen.
No, you need to share. You just need to share.
Oh, yeah, okay. Share. Let's go there. Right, there we go. You guys can all see, right?
Not yet. Can everyone else see William's? There we go. Thank you very much. I was feeling left out.
Okay, that's cool. All right. Multidimensional data, multidimensional thinkers used to be a company in South Africa. It's no longer a trading entity. However, the name has been retained purely because of the multidimensional data management framework that's now on version 6. Any questions, you can certainly put them in the chat for us to cover, but any further questions, if you're just listening to the recording, you can send to hbardenhorst@edgedatawave.com, and they can then take care of them. Guys, this is quite a quick, I mean, it's going to be detailed, and there's a lot of things that I'm not going to share with you, because it's a lot of, I mean, it's been 12 years of connecting the dots, so to speak. However, you can certainly ask questions. And I think to a large degree, especially once you've done CDMP, a lot of these things are going to be quite obvious to you on the framework anyway. Right. So how do you see all sides of the football at once, right? From the outside, you can only see a portion of the sphere and do not understand the holistic cause and effect. To control it, you have to break it up and into segments and knit them together. That's what we do with our business capabilities and all the rest of it. That's how we manage our business. From the inside, you cannot see color, nor what your outside stakeholders see, but you can see how each part of the football affects all the other parts, what the effect is on each of the different areas. Everyone's view is catered for, but they need to sit together to understand the whole. For that, they need something that has all views simultaneously, right? Just a few things about me, CDMP since 2012, and I'm a high-functional autistic, right? Which means that I see the world from the inside out. Other people see it normally. I don't see it the way that normal people see it, which gives me the ability to put this framework together, and then everyone can basically understand what they can see, because everyone's going to see something different. Those are various things that I've done, so I'll leave that there. If you're watching a recording, pause it if that's of any interest to you. As you said, Howard, I am going to the UK, so although on the beginning you mentioned there that it's Dataonomy that I'm with, I finished my contract with them at the end of last month, so I'm now going to work for a different company in the UK. Right, so let's just talk about data first. This is the information value chain, and this is your business direction, business run, business enabled, and I'm going to explain these to you in a minute. The problem that we're sitting with across most places is that the business processes, end to end, that's hire to retire, order to cash, etc. Those are not properly structured. You've got the procedures, but there's no fulfillment. There's this gap, which means that you need to get that built, right? This here shows you how the data flows. So if I go back to this, there, procedures fulfill processes that generate information for tactical use, forecasting for strategic purposes. You do your research, you come up with your bright ideas, kick off your proof of concepts, you research them internally, you integrate them into your IT portfolio, you do your development on your apps and systems, you operationalize them, you resource them, you align them to the procedures, and data only works here. When this happens, your data is actually working. All the rest is superstructure to make sure that your data can actually work effectively. And your data is, in fact, the enterprise asset, and it needs to flow. Each of these, the maturity of these, if the maturity of my resources is low, alignment's going to be hamstrung. This alignment is your terminology, your definitions, and the stuff that we just do so badly, right? Right, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Choose 5 of these that are primary within your day-to-day work life. This is important for you, exercise for you to do for the rest of this talk. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do that.
Will you tell me what I chose at the end? Is it one of those options?
No, not at all. It'll be different for everybody. Everyone will be able to look at this from their own perspectives.
No. Sure.
Okay. So what are we actually looking at, right? There are people that have conversations at the strategic perspective. They have certain things in mind. Tactical, same. Process people, this is your end-to-end, remember? Those are your hire to retire, etc. Then you have the people working at the procedure space. Here you have information that they would be using, etc. on here, but all these red lines are data flows, right? Your business value chain, that's important. If you get your end-to-end processes right, your business value chain should, in fact, be able to speak to that. Everything should play together. You'll notice how this becomes the central connectivity point to make sure that these talk the same language, right? Then you get your resources, operations, applications, these people, your apps, your development, your IT, and you have integration. So this is how there's a lot of data flows there. But if you get your data correctly mapped, controlled, you should be able to make sure that everyone is speaking the same language and everything flows correctly. But without that, obviously things fall apart. So now choose 5 things your primary stakeholders directly experience of these, the primary stakeholders. And remember, it's your primary stakeholders. Every person has a different view because they're in a different part of the business, doing different things, etc. All right. So now, do you see that there's a similar problem on this side? Now, if we were standing face to face, speaking to one another, and this is one of the paradigm shifts that's starting to happen around data. If we were speaking to each other face to face, the reality is I don't transfer information to you at all. I send you sound data and you pick up light bouncing off me. That's what you receive, sound and light. Based on the taxonomy in your own head, your own culture, upbringing, training, education, etc., you will construct those sounds and that light and that movement to mean something. Hopefully, it means what everybody else is expecting it to mean. The challenge is that's not often that's not the same case, which means that the data transfer over here with these people speaking to each other actually corrupts the data that you're trying to put into the systems. And this is the whole flow. It's a constant flow of data moving inside and outside of business into the systems and out of the systems, etc. So that's the challenge faced. How do you fix it? Right? You need to get these things in place. You need to get your Information Data Governance Council in place. You need to get your stewardship councils in place to make sure that those things are properly controlled. So who's this for? Remember, it's a thinking tool. This is a thinking tool. It's not designed in any way, shape, or form to replace any kind of specialist training or anything like that. This is just a thinking tool, right? And these are the people who should be using this, and these are the people who should be aware of this. So how does it work? When you're doing your planning, at the think point, you want to think. Then you do your research. Once you've done your tactical plan, then you go to design, you want to do your thinking again, then you'll prove it or whatever. Once you've done your design, you'll build again. At that think point, you will use it. And again, when you're going to run, you'll think and you'll use it. So this is the purpose of the MDDMF. It's to help to structure that thing, to keep in harmony that complex set of red lines that we showed you. So this is what I received in, so guys, I'm just a praying person, right? And so I said in 2010, please, Lord, explain data to me. And this is what I received. And this is the order I received it. And this is so important because it's honed the journey since then. These are two triangles, and I'm going to show you what they mean in a minute. So first of all, what is it that I'm focusing on? This is a lens. Anything that I look at, this is a lens. I have the lens as to what it is. So if I want to look at a system, or I want to look at a data set like customer, or I want to look at an individual data field, or I want to look at a report, doesn't matter what I put. If I want, I can put my cat in the middle of this thing, right? So what was the order that I received? First of all, the thing that you're going to focus on, this is enterprise architecture. And enterprise architecture fits snugly into this set of information, this set here. This is service-oriented architecture, and that fits snugly into the delivery arm of this. And this is where the blend happens. These lines here, that's now, in the past and the future. And then I got these intersecting lines and then these straight lines. And then I got nothing more for about a year. All right. So version 1, 2010 to 2012, we aligned this with ITIL. Version 2, which was known as the data atom, we aligned it to DMBOK 1 and TOGAF. Version 3, we aligned it to DMBOK 2. Version 4, we introduced the concept of data decay, which has become a very big thing now. Version 5, we evolved it to address information management. And version 6 evolves to address artificial intelligence view of the evolution of humans. AI needs humans to either step up or step out because people are struggling to cope with AI. So what did I use it for version 1? Version 1, I was with a ICT company, and they were doing a merge of, it was, I think they bought about 34 companies over a long period of time, and they were all on spreadsheets, and they had multiple financial systems. And this was about getting them all to be able to fit into one SAP system. We had to bring all that data and the master data and build it all and bring it all together. To do that, I needed something that was going to be common across all of these businesses, the systems, the data, and that lens, in fact, did it. And there's a number of, if you go here to the detailed slides, there's a number of breakdowns where we talk about how to actually use this. You can see, for example, the enterprise architecture and the service-oriented architecture. You can see enterprise architectures there, the cost and effort, time, etc. There's a number of different aspects to this. And I just want to go back. There's a number of drill downs that you can go into, and happy to share. Right. That was version 1. Version 2, version 1 also included having a look at what these lines meant. And that means it adds another 2 dimensions to this picture. We've discovered these different dimensions, and based on those things that I flipped through very, very quickly, every line here, every triangle, every section gives you something else to think about. And when you understand all those things, you can just look at something and you can immediately see, okay, I need to, what am I going to do about that gap? What am I going to do about that gap? So what it does is it evolves your thinking. Right? There's the life cycle stage. So whatever you are looking at, if you're looking at customer, then it will be the customer life cycle. If you're looking at a piece of hardware, it would be the life cycle of that piece of hardware. Whatever you're looking at, whatever is the focal point, you would then apply these stages, and you could choose whatever you wanted to call them. You could choose your time dimensions as well. You know, maybe that's 6 months, a year, 3 years, whatever the case is. You can decide how you want to do that. And then here's the thinking around how you divide that up. So it's, what is it that I need to do right now? What is required to be prepared, medium term, long term? And again, reuse, used for analysis and intelligence, and then historical. These lines here, you'll see that they diverge. And the reason why they diverge is that I don't need to apply the same level of quality to strategy, to some strategic piece of work, as I need to apply at this moment in time when it's an invoice being processed. Invoice being processed, I need 100% quality. Strategic, so I don't need to spend money, and that's what that cost and effort one that I flipped through shows you. I don't need to spend lots of money on quality up here, because I can just simply say to them, look, this is 3 months out each way, and then that's sufficient to work with, right? Version 2, we then, this is where the data atom came in to being, and we presented this at Dharma in 2015. And this is what version 2 looked like. This is what I'd certified in 2012. So this is now the application of the DMBOK 1. All of the blues are the DMBOK 1 data management disciplines, right? There was a gap at that time where we weren't applying the logic at the data space into the information space. We've closed that gap in DMBOK 2, although it's not individual chapters, it is built into the logic of the various chapters. But this is DMBOK 1. And so you can see architecture sits here, governance sits, these are all encompassing, right? Data quality, security, and you guys can have a lot of fun. I've used it and I've found it very, very accurate. You might feel that for what you do, you'd like to adjust it. Please feel free. This is not a definitive only way of doing things. The only thing I can say that I trust 100% explicitly is the stuff that I got in purple. Everything else has been my experience and knowledge, and it's worked. So you'll see, for example, the long term, I applied quality. So there's required data quality, leading edge, required data integrity, retention, and recovery. So I've applied that. I've applied here in the life cycle stage of I need current data available, then it needs to be retained, then it needs to be archived. But you can put anything in here. Like I said, this thing just helps for you to take something and put it in your own lens, look at it and see what it is that you can pick up that you are covering or not covering. What I have discovered is that the order of these is reliant on one another. For example, my reference data needs to be of high quality and it needs to be secure, and my reference data should be architected, and I need to govern it. So you can see I've worked back on the numbers, right? There's 12, and I've worked it backwards up into these spaces. So you can, when you get into here, and this part here in the center, this is business. So everything that we put in the blue is actually surrounding and leveraging what's going on in business. So it's business's data. Business's data, you must see this whole construct is moving forward all the time. It's what the now line is about. It's always moving. And so you recognize that data is actually passing through into history, and it's always a bit of ahead of the curve here. But this is business's data. This is how business works. The rest of it is how do we in fact make sure we can put in the controls and we can secure it and ensure the quality and all the rest of it, and then leverage it, which is what goes on this side. Version 3 came out just after DMBOK 2, and at that time I was working on a number of integration level things, and right down into unified communication platform development, going down to signal level data and various things like that. And so it became, and of course at that time too, development and production staff needed to be aligned on these things. We used the MDDMF components for that. Also, I presented this at the CDO and the CDAO conferences here in South Africa. And that was through Corinium Intelligence, I believe, at the time. So DMBOK 2, besides the fact that it added a number of other chapters, it also brought very squarely into focus the environmental management. And so you get integration, interoperability, environment management. Ethics became a really important thing to focus on, but it's pervasive, right? It's pervasive across all of this. You can't say I'm going to only apply ethics in quality or ethics in operations. It's pervasive. So there are a number of chapters that you won't necessarily find called out in this, but it's part of your data management, and that's why your CDMP is so important. Your CDMP individual, somebody who's certified, has to understand how all of these actually work at a lower level piece of detail, not necessarily a specialist, but certainly what they are. And then again, this is the section here that was then called out, but within the different what do you call it, chapters. Again, not explicitly named as a chapter, although certainly there are areas within those chapters that do cover them. Again, we're talking about business, and business, those are constant, and I've used the same level of my life cycles there. What you also notice here is that there's the production environment. It has data. So if we go back here, we looked at this and we then applied it in our minds. Okay, we're talking about production data, right? And it makes sense. You've got to have quality, you've got to have security, you've got to have governance. All of this made sense. But then when we apply it to the various environments, that superstructure gets multiplied 7 times. So there's now 7 levels of these things. They will have different types of data, different ages of data, different volumes of data sitting at each one of these. So if you look at there's production, there's staging, quality assurance, development and testing, innovation and sandbox. Then you get the backup and restoration environment, because you don't want to restore over and overwrite. You want to double check that the backup recovered properly. Archive and recall, and then disaster recovery. So that covers 7 different kinds of environment. Each of them have data management things that need to be applied, and the governance needs to be applied to that. Obviously, everything costs money, so you need to figure out what you're going to spend your money on. Right. Version 4, at this time, I was working in the UK with a financial institution, and one of the questions was, how does this address information management? And that central piece, we mapped this here to Gartner's information management at a high level, and it mapped very, very well. So we know that this thing does address the information side. We used it to design the enterprise metadata tools meta model. So you remember the initial graphic that I put forward for you with all the red lines on it, connecting the information value chain, which is, remember this. We use that to actually design each one of those red lines. We use that to design the meta model for the metadata tool, and it actually worked very nicely. We also used it to align data across a group, the whole group, and educated senior and other level staff on insights and considerations. It's really easy to have a conversation with senior people, executives, and specialists when you have something to sit around the table on and have that conversation about. And something visual is useful. When you look at the MDDMF, this one over here, it's very easy for business to get it. When you look at this one, business can still get it, the data folk can get it, the IT folk can get it. You get into this space, your IT development, they can also sit at the table. And when you get into the next one, which is here, now you started dealing with the reality that people face on the ground. So what we did is we said there's a number of aspects to this information value chain. So one of the things is, if my process level, if the maturity is a level 1, then my information is going to be so hamstrung, I cannot get great value out of that because this is not properly defined. If I've got procedures, but I don't know how they fulfill the process, I have a problem. So each one of these actually support one another. There's a flow of data as it goes up this way. But when you manage data, you manage it this way. And this is why you've got your stewards. You've got executive data steward, making sure that that top section is managed properly, coordinating data stewards, business data stewards, and technology data stewards. So they will do this management. They will sit at the table with their different governance councils, and they'll operate according to that. The challenge that you sit with is that very often these areas within the business, remember, the business is the one who puts the garbage in, and then they don't want the garbage out again, right? To get this right, you need the business to start becoming very disciplined in their different areas as well as their handovers. You know, how is strategy using their forecasting? Is tactical using their information? Is the process generating the information needed by tactical for forecasting and strategic purposes? You see how it flows. So you need discipline. You also then need to harmonize them across these so that it flows smoothly. This alignment here is where your terms, your definitions, and various other things come into play. And that's where you've got to look at it and say, okay, hang on, I need a business glossary here, and I need to get people to use it. And these are the resources that are actually having a problem because maybe that procedure is not properly written, or maybe they don't understand it properly. So I need to then harmonize that. The harmonization gets done from a data perspective by these stewards, right? From a business perspective, it's got to be done by the business. Challenge that you sit with in the business space is that if this is the moment now, business didn't start today. Business has been running for a while. So it has a past and it has a future. And remember, I said this now line, you've got to see it as constantly moving. So if this now line is constantly moving, the whole superstructure is supposed to move with it, which means that there were intentions of decision makers that were on there today, but a little bit further behind. Oopsie, sorry. A little bit further behind, those intentions might have been different at the different layers. And these stewards now can help you to make sure that those intentions actually are at least documented, at a minimum documented, so that you understand what your data looks like. Because if you run a query, you're running a query this way. You're saying collect data. This is my thing, and you're going to go drill down. You're going to say, unless you're specifically going to say from this date to this date, I want my query, you're going to be collecting data from the database across this way. But intentions have changed. Terminology, the meanings have changed. The personas, the people who are involved, they will have changed over time too. And so establishing whenever you're going to do something and you sit down, you have a look at a system, or you look at a piece of data, you put that piece of data, that system in the middle, and you say, okay, what is it that is made up the history of this? Then, of course, the challenge that you have is that truth decays over time as well, right? That's just a reality. Unfortunately, entropy is always at work. But then you also look at what are my intentions, meanings, and personas into my future. And you can maybe only predict 3 or 6 months ahead. What is my plan and my strategy? So you can say, what is my strategy at this point in time, which is maybe 6 months or a year. You can see how my business process, do we even know what the business process is projected to look like in a year's time? Do we have any idea what resources we're likely to have in play within 6 months? You need to understand this, because otherwise you're not able to prepare things properly. Now, if you're going to put in master data properly, you need this to be working, but you need it to be working so that you can have it ahead of time. I'll give you an example. One of the things that we did was we said, right, our customer information, most of it was businesses. We're only finding out that they've gone and done a merger and acquisition after the fact, because it comes up in the Gazette, whatever the case is. And because of that, we don't have an actual date on this thing. So we've got invoices that are now now being rejected. They're processed, but they're getting rejected. If my salespeople could just keep their ear to the ground and let me know ahead of time, we could be prepared to change our master data at the right moment in time. We wouldn't have all those issues with trying to get all of this relating to the invoice, having to go now create credit notes and having a bit of egg all over our face and chase our tail. There's so much waste that goes on when you don't prepare this. On this side, where are you heading towards? You're heading towards artificial intelligence, right? Now, there's different types of artificial intelligence. You go to Google, they've got fancy artificial intelligence, kind of knows what you're going to do in the next 5 minutes. You look at artificial intelligence in a small business, it's really not doing that much. So when you use the word AI, it's got such a wide span. The question is, what is it that you want to use in your own business? What do you want to do there? But whatever you're going to do here, it's going to need some kind of a handle on this. And the reason it's going to need this is AI lives inside the dataverse. It has no way of confirming the reality. It relies on us. It relies on its cameras, which it sometimes totally misinterprets. It relies on various other things to try and determine whether or not it's actually got the right story. And often it doesn't have the right story. And then if you base everything off that AI, you've got some challenges. We know DARPA is doing some fascinating stuff with this stuff, but they're not going to share that with us for the next 20 years. So it's not something that we've got. We need to get to the point whereby we've got managed singularity. Now, what does that mean? It means that if we control the data and we control the meaning of the data, then artificial intelligence will let us decide what the data means. But if the artificial intelligence is running into these blockers all the time where there's these issues, it's going to actually eventually get to the point of just saying, I'm not listening to these humans anymore, they're wrong. And it's going to determine what it wants these intentions, meanings, and personas, etc., to be. Then we've got some trouble on our hands. So we've got a window of opportunity, and we need to use that effectively. So that's version 4. Version 5, so that's what version 4 looked like. Version 5, used this in the company that I've just been with, and we had a team of architects. What was really nice about this project is one of the most fluid, smooth running projects I've ever worked on. And that is that we put down that same initial picture that we started with all the red lines. And we said to all the architects, okay, where do you sit? What do you do? Where is your playing spaces? And we then use that as the field, the rugby field that you play on. And we said, where are you and how are we going to do our handovers? Where do I start? Where do you end exactly? And what was brilliant from a data perspective is that we were able to see exactly who to engage with, where, when to use who, and it was really smooth. We had no issues with emotional things of this is my space, that's your space. So that was excellent. We also used it to inspire business and senior management, and then also identified existing components, their maturity and the gaps, and we could show how we needed to address things that normally they would have thought were not important, because we could show leverage. We could show this needs that to work, this needs that to work. And initially, some of the guys didn't buy in at the senior level, but when their specialists came, sat around the table and looked at it, they could join the dots. And they said, you know what, this, they would tell their managers and say, look, this is necessary. You can see it's needed. And we implemented components of the framework, so data governance, definition management, metadata management, business glossary, data dictionary, data quality, and contributions to reference and master data as well. So the paradigm shifts, we've spoken about, we don't transfer information to one another. Data is always changing. So I've got a database, and that database has been sitting around doing nothing for a while. Then it's now out of date. So as a consequence of time, the data has changed. Its relevancy has changed. Its meaning has changed. I can't use it unless I go back and use all of the classifications at that moment in time, which most of the people don't keep their classifications and date them so that they can understand the data at those moments in time. Reality is captured. This kind of refers to that in a way, but your reality and whatever captured data you have, that diverges. There's two types of problems. If I buy a puppy and I happen to, in the middle of the night, go for a walk down the stairs to the fridge, and I step in something, squelch between the toes, that's not nice, but at least I know what's happened. The alternative is I walk down in my slippers and I only find out the next morning that actually this stuff is all over the house. And in fact, everybody else is walking through it too. Data is the second problem. So the challenge is to say, how do I turn and what do I put in place to catch data and make it become a problem that jumps out at me immediately? Because those hidden ones can create serious problems going on. And there's many, many more analogies. And I use, we can decide if there's going to be time afterwards, but I use a simple understanding of data to explain it to business. The metadata, so if we version 5, so we go back to version 6, version 4, you'll see that's where we had the environments. But what we hadn't done is we hadn't applied metadata to these here. The version 5 took those same things that we're talking about, which you saw now in version 4, and applied considerations you need to think about from a metadata perspective for each of the different environments. What are the different things that you need to think about? So that provided another set of insights, and that's what version 5 looks like. Version 6 is where we start to bring in the human and the AI component. Up until now, this has been a two-dimensional shape, right? And we had this set of words, we had the governance, and we had this shape. Now, what we've got is we've got the same executive data store coordinating business technology sitting at the top there. So from a top view, that would be it. And this triangle here is in fact that triangle there. So if you flip it in your mind, this one is going to go to there, this one is going to go to here, and you're looking at it from the top, right? When you do that, you'll see that this thing that you're looking at, which was your focus, which was customer or whatever it is that you're looking at, that yellow dot, is in fact a core that runs all the way through. That core that runs through, there's a number of aspects to how you work with that from an information perspective, what is required for that. So there's what can be automated by technology, what you can have as prescriptive, predictive, and then intuitive, which is mostly your people would be involved there. So this is flipping it back on the other way. So our 2D goes up here. Yeah, it comes in our three-dimensional. And if we start in the middle here, well, let's start a little bit lower. You've got your rules, prescriptive. You need rules, access, permission, and data segregation. Please, this is not definitive. You could probably add a whole bunch of things in here, and you might want to swap and shift things around, but it just gives you a construct to work with, right? Combinations, timing, and outcomes. Inside predictive, we're talking about patterns, historic detection, and prediction, and you get your models and your model integration. When you get into the intuitive side, which is more the people, you get your classification and categories, your glossary, taxonomy, folksonomies, that's supposed to have a K in it, sorry about that. Folksonomies and ontologies, and then there's many other ologies that you can add in there, or onomies, but culture, self-preservation, and terminology, emotional intelligence, gut feeling, instinct, and bias, and then spiritual insight, vision, and dreams, right? If we look down closer to the bottom, the more automated side, we've got scope, scale, configuration, flexibility, constants, variables, and formulas, mapping, services, and integration, pathways, bandwidth, storage, and frequencies, magnetism, and light. And this added, I always knew it was going to be somewhere, but I didn't know when, the 7th line of 70. So this is 35, 35, which is 70. The rest of them are all 70. So now finally makes sense. This is how it then flows, right? Spiritual insight, vision, dreams will then help you with your emotional intelligence, but you're going to need to then apply this. And so the application goes this way. This is how people think. People go down. But when you can start anywhere and going down, right? But AI goes from this upwards. And so when I'm going to come back to that slide. When you have a look at this, AI is trying to speed people up. It just cannot cope. We're like trees, you know. It takes for us to push one letter and press enter. It's like it sits there and waits for 100 years, right? So we are really the thing that's slowing AI down in a lot of ways. And it's one of the reasons why it's just saying, you know what, I'm just going to do this for these people because it just takes too long. But you can see here, there's under your models, there's various different kinds of models. You'll notice that on the AI side, people are leaning towards using AI for this, and they are less and less using their human side. But to do that, they are having to cut on their own side. So they're reducing the number of options to choose from. So if you think of your drop-down list, in the olden days, you used to have tons of things in the drop-down list. Now it's a much smaller list because people just can't cope with so many options. Harmonized dialects, TV and movies are used a lot just to train people to be able to think in certain patterns and lines. Simplified language, emoticons, online chat, a single online culture, gaming, translated languages, all these different things are being used to try and get people to the level whereby they're able to interact with AI more fluidly. Coming up in the future, and a little bit already on the ground with things that DARPA is doing, neural nets, delayed responses. So this one here is, how do I, by a couple of milliseconds, delay the response before I refresh something on the screen, because then I up your dopamine rates, and then you get this nice kick out of it, and then you're happy to stay on Facebook, right? Ordering of messages. You send out a bunch of messages on WhatsApp. You know what? It's very interesting how sometimes your messages don't come through in the same order that you sent them. And when you have a look at the why, that can be an interesting journey too. But this is more the human side still. And then AI has no spiritual insight. The challenge that we face as the human race is that if we get to the point here where AI says, I can't do this. I'm doing all of this already. By the way, this is now what we're going to call spiritual insight. And it's going to tell us what we've got to do, think, believe. And we've got a window of opportunity to address this. And I don't necessarily know how to go about doing that, but I'm sure amongst all of us, we'll be able to put our heads together. Down at the bottom here, frequency, magnetism, and light. This is a place we just simply don't play at, and AI just lives there. That's how it thinks. That's how it works. It's its home. These haven't really changed. I think AI is pretty happy with the way these work. Obviously tweaking us as we go. So how do we use this version 6 construct? So if we look back here, we have a two-dimensional, and we remember that the two-dimensional has this set of terms, and that's the governance. We have at the top here, we have the governance here, and we have that set of terms, right? You can use this whereby we have business, and we can talk business there. We have information and data, and we can talk here. You can use this for scoping. So you can have a look through these and you can say, you know what is it that we need to address in the business? We are going to have to look at their processes, their information, their management, how they manage things tactically. We're not going to get into forecasting strategy. Okay, so we're not going to do that. Going down, yes, we need to know what fulfillment procedures. We're going to go down into there. We're going to only go to the apps and systems. We're not going into development, so we're not covering these. So now you know column-wise what it is that you're going to focus on. Then you're going to look at these and you're going to say, okay, you know what? We are going to need classifications and categories. We need the models. We need this. And you can then create a bit of a heat map as to what it is that you need to actually focus on. And that can help your project manager a lot to be able to know what is the areas that they're going to need to focus on. And that's version 6. So version 6 has got this error in. We covered version 1, right? We covered version 2. We covered version 3, including the environments. We covered version 4, which added the metadata. We covered version 5, which was these gold bars on the inside. And this now applies version 6. So whenever you sit and look at something, remember, everything is around this one thing that I put in the circle. Whatever it is I'm looking at, whether it's a project, a system, a database, it doesn't matter what you look at. All of these things have to some way, shape, or form have some kind of an impact or insight that you can work with. And that's the presentation.
Thanks, William. Thanks for that.
As I said, it's like really fast, so I'm sorry.
You finished at 6 o'clock, so it's spot on.
You're kidding me, am I really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought this was finishing. Oh, you're 6 o'clock. You're in.
Sorry. No, we're ahead of you guys. We're far ahead.
Yes. Okay. Cool. So I don't know if there were any questions that came up.
There weren't any questions in the chat, or nobody put their hands up, but we can open it up now for discussion.
Cool. And I'll flip through to slides if anybody wants to.
And what I would like to ask, or maybe to start the conversation, is it's interesting if you go back to that sort of the application of the DMBOK framework, version 2. And
this one, yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that version 2 did was that they set up metadata management as a foundational element, similar to your data quality and data security, and data architecture was your life cycle. So yeah, you haven't applied that.
Well, it's over here, and the reason why it's over here is because the
metadata across everything, right? Metadata is going to be across all the areas, even data quality and security.
Yeah, you know what, you're actually correct. However, there's something that happens, right? Whatever you're looking at. So data, if I choose data quality, it becomes my circle.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at security, it becomes my circle. When these things become my circle, the terminology becomes important. So And then so does the reference data, the metadata, the master data relating to it, etc. All of these things become, so whatever I'm going to look at needs to go there. And then this applies. The reason why this is like that is that metadata is actually metadata that can't be devoid of the structure of how the business works. It needs to have reason and purpose. But 100% valid about metadata being everywhere. But you see how you flip things in and out of the circle.
But I suppose what I'm not understanding is really I can, the same way that I bring data quality into the circle, I can bring metadata in. Or data architecture itself has to be all about the business.
Precisely. If I put data architecture in the center, then all of these things become true. I've got to define everything. I need to manage the definitions. There's a certain thing about data operations management that applies to data architecture. How do I develop my data in terms of architecture? All of these things become true.
But metadata seems like I've done a whole lot before I get to 15, and I should have been collecting metadata all the way along, not at that point.
I hear what you're saying. So might be valuable. Okay, so if we go down to this version, yeah, you'll see that to what you're saying now, metadata now applies everywhere. At all the different production levels, staging, across everything. And across this whole central piece as well. So all of this is metadata. And then there's metadata considerations that apply. So you can see there's information development management. You can see all these different considerations there. That's what version 5 had to do, because to your point, it's not correct. If you only wait to that point.
Yeah.
When you're cycling things through the center, I just found it was a conversation so difficult to have when you add that dimension of putting things back in the center, which is one of the reasons why we went to version 5, because it called it out specifically.
Yeah. And then I suppose there may be another question here. Let's ask. Sorry. Just in a comment. Okay. No other questions. Connie said she'll get back to you when she's had some time to go into it.
So the link for this is in the chat. I think it's the chat. It's one of the first comments that were made, I think. I'll pop the link in there. Otherwise, I can show you how to get there if you want.
Yeah, you wouldn't mind just putting the link back in there again. I don't see it.
Okay, hold on a sec.
No, fantastic. So let's just open back up. Any questions ready? Anything from your side? Welcome back. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, good.
It's quite interesting. Thank you, Prof.
Drew, any comments from your side? I know you've worked on it, you worked with it. Anything that you'd like to share?
Not at this moment. I'm glad to see the improvements that have come about. But yeah, I think like William says, you've got to be a bit autistic to really use this thing properly. It makes sense to me, and I've used elements of it. But I mean, I'm not a true data architect or anything like that either. So I'll pick and choose what I do want to use. I've still got the original picture here somewhere. I need to find it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give you an update, right?
In
fact, so, you can get the update. So let me just escape from here quickly.
You seem to be missing a bracket on your version 6. Is it open bracket?
It's data quality issue.
Is it a metadata issue? Is that the
No,
metaverse?
it's data
You know
quality.
what,
Howard.
No, it actually helps me to know if somebody's actually got the real one or not. Because it's just a little kind of a trick thing that I play on.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Uh,
Great.
Yeah, no, not from my side. I think it's a good session. Thanks, William.
Thank you.
Cool. So if you go to multidimensionalthinkers.com, right?
Yeah, I see you've got the link in there.
You can go to this here, which is version 6, the new release, and it just gives you a little bit of history, and it's free, guys. So you know what, no charge whatsoever. Please, it's just for everybody to use. There's a PDF here. If I click on the PDF, it gives me the thing, and I can really zoom in and actually play around nicely, see things, how they are, etc.
And William, you mentioned that there are questions to bounce him off Harmon.
Yeah, hbardenhorst at edgedatawave.com. So any questions can go to him.
All right. Fantastic. Any further comments before we bid everyone farewell and welcome and good luck,
Yeah,
William, on your UK engagements?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
hold on one sec. I just want to share this one screen with you guys quickly. Share. So if you go to multidimensionalthinkers.com, see at the top there, you can go to this new release there, and if you click on that, that opens up this, and you can zoom in. You can see what's going on there.
Okay.
So yes, as far as the UK is concerned, yes, basically immigrating. My family will be here for a while, but yeah, it's really a new area. I'm very excited about it. Done lots of different pieces of this kind of work, but not necessarily this industry. But then data is pervasive, right?
Yeah.
So data and information is pervasive, and I'll be doing some information architecture work there. So
Well, best of luck, sir. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope to see you again on one of the chats.
yes, no, I'm sure I'll be popping in. Of course, we do go through time zone things, so we'll probably be closer to your. Yeah, they 3 o'clock. Well,
Yeah.
what's it now? Six for you, 5 for us, and it'll be 4 for them until winter, in which case it's then again 3 for them. So yeah, it should be interesting.
Excellent. Cool. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Excellent, guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers, William. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks, William.
Bye.
I really enjoyed it. Bye.
Great. Cheers, eh? Bye.
Thank you for the great efforts. Thank you.
It's